Welcome to the Libertarian Institute YouTube and Odyssey channel. Today I am joined by my friend Josiah Baker. We will be talking about the Tennessee Take Action rally on January 20th. Josiah, where is this rally in Tennessee?
This rally will be in downtown Nashville at Public Square Park. It is right in front of where all the business to overtake our rights happens in the state of Tennessee.
All right, so why should I go to something like this? I hear it's about gun rights. Aren't those extremely dangerous tools which kill like 30,000 people a year? Why are gun rights important?
Gun rights are important for me, and this is also coming from somebody. I only have two that we know of. Um, I have a Remington shotgun and a Taurus revolver that are both on my wife's side of the bed because she's more likely to shoot someone than myself. But it's important for me because if you look at it from a consequentialist side, why do we want um, only the police who, on average, get to your home within 8 to 12 minutes? Your body is starting to cool, you're dead. Um, the ultimate reality of life is you are responsible for yourself and your property and your family, and that's against intruders, whether government or non. And I think the American condition has been to offload that to government agencies that are better angels at doing everything from education to protection. And if I made the ineffective argument, you just look at the statistics. You're more active, you're more likely to take care of yourself than anyone else is. And ultimately, that's what liberty is to me. It's the freedom to be responsible over yourself.
This is one of the amazing things I run into with government advocates, where they say it is so vitally important that once every 4 years you get a 1 in 10 million vote on who the president might be, and allegedly the votes are counted. Because, this is your way of being represented in the world. You're not just sitting by passively. But your one vote does not necessarily change the outcome. However, whether or not you have the ability to defend yourself really changes the course of your life. And not just whether or not, even if you never use the gun, just your mental health overall. Have you come across a innocent explanation as to why the people who say monopolies are so bad and absolutely terrible, and also the state should monopolize guns? What is it about this anti-gun mindset that is so attractive to so many people?
Honestly, like I view a lot of these conversations in forms of almost mathematical formulas, or in literature, a Mad Lib, if you will. The same exact person that will make the argument that monopolies are bad in every other industry or in every other service, I don't think they're really concerned with consistency, because they'll take that exact same formulaic of X plus Y equals, Z, and not apply that same formula to guns. And to me, it's a fallacy if that formula doesn't apply universally. That's why I'm an advocate for liberty. But I think a lot of times it depends on who you're talking to. I'm a big advocate of listening. I've got elephant ears, and I try to listen to someone. I'm also a salesman by trade, so the oldest rule in the book is you listen to someone and they'll tell you how they need to be sold. And I've listened to multiple debates and whatnot of the most recent at the Soho was Gene and Friedman, Knapp versus consequentialist arguments. For me, you really, as a libertarian, you have to really do your homework, and you also, unfortunately, have to do something that libertarians aren't good at, and that's shutting up and listening. And if you listen to someone and through a Socratic method or whatnot, with a series of questions, really drill down 2 or 3 layers, you can understand where they're coming from, their situation that they've had, and instead of dismissing it, something I learned from James Lindsay's book, How to Have Impossible Conversations, phenomenal. When you drill down with them, some people call it empathy, some people call it listening. You can say, "I hear you." Something as simple as, "I hear where you're coming from," and then and find a way to negotiate that conversation to a point where it's not just this. And that's honestly, the onus is on you as the negotiator, if you will, to really fill out where that person is on the spectrum of openness, and then make sure it's not a net waste of your time. But if someone has had a rough, experience or whatnot, it's important to dissolve that, let the person be heard. Feelings are feelings, whether they're based in fact or not. The thing that kills me sometimes is we as libertarians, we come in with the heavy hand of, facts don't care about your feelings or whatnot. When the real reality is, in the real world outside of the internet, the majority of people make decisions based on emotional reaction. So it's finding ways, I guess, to put skin on the theory and put it to a person that'll receive it.
Yeah, and this is so important just for the cultural discussions in society in general, because it's just so obvious when I watch something like Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman, where she's like, we're not like, the corporate press. We are, independent media. This is for the people. By the way, blacks are more likely to get rejected from loans than whites.
Yeah.
And this is where America is. I go, hold on. I'm going to watch the rest of this and I'm going to throw my iPad across the room if they don't mention the fact that, and whites get rejected more than Asians, and young people get rejected more than old people. They just pin people against each other. So even if we can sort of lead by example, so to speak, by listening and talking calmly, that is going to do a hell of a lot more damage than even getting people to read the Voluntarist Handbook, free PDF at libertarianinstitute.org, or anything like that. So I love that answer. I was thinking of how I went from being so terrified of guns and, more or less advocating significant amounts of gun control. There was a quote by Stefan Molyneux that really stood out to me. He said, "There is no such thing as gun control. There is only centralizing gun ownership in the hands of a small political elite and their minions." So even after all the mass murder campaigns that governments are involved in, people still say that, well, these people should have guns.
Yeah.
When it comes to talking to Democrats, what would you say? Is it a statistic that you give them? Is it an emotional argument, a story, an anecdote? What do you say to Democrats who advocate gun control out of the kindness of their heart? They're afraid the vulnerable will be injured by guns.
It tends so when I'm having a discussion, very quickly in the discussion, I try to put out feelers to see where people are at, because for me, I need to, whatever discussion we're having, I know where my principles are, and I have to find a way to convey those principles in a way that the person will receive them. So it's almost in real time. What game are we playing? Where are your value systems in the game? Now I must outflank you on your value systems to show you fallacy in a loving way as best as possible. Scott says it all the time, and I love it. You attack the left from the left and the right from the right. So currently, and you can argue whether Democrats are actually left or extreme moderates, but for the sake of argument, them being on the left tends to be they're very much like my political button and pin wall over here, in the fact that they love pinning things on them that show how nice and good they are. So things like anti-racism is the soup of the week. So Maj Toure does a phenomenal job at outflanking this with using words that most liberals despise, like racism, and using statistics and American history, which they also love to moan and groan about, and using that as a nice bludgeon tool to pry in that with a consequentialist style argument, basically, that these policies disproportionately affect minority communities and the safety of these communities. And then in that, I know that racial equality is important to you. So don't you want the same protections for minority communities to have in their own backyard and not have to wait for the police, which, by the way, you also say act out racial policies? Do you really want the people that you say are racist having only ones with the guns? I mean, look, you're really advocating for things that Bull Connor would have had a wet dream about. You're advocating for policies that the actual KKK would love. And I know you don't like that. So what can we do about that? We need more protections on the home front for minority communities. And I know these communities are important to you. So this is fill in the blank. And Maj is very good about that. But it's almost like a warm verbal hug to say it's okay, you're an idiot. And it's sometimes, and you know, the percentage rate, I would say 50-50. They're either going to dig in or they're going to be like, oh shit, I don't want to be, I don't want to be advocating for racist policies. And then they have a little bit of, you see the gears lock up, and then you can come in with some truth. Um, and then on the flip side, sometimes people are going to double down, say somehow by you pointing out this logical fallacy that you're the racist. And at that point, have a nice day, sir. Enjoy enjoy this la la land you live in. I don't know. You do have to. There's a certain point where you do have to just walk away and move on to the next person because they're never
Of
changing their mind.
of course. I I love that approach where you're just like, "Did you just quote George Wallace and George Lincoln Rockwell? There's no way you could have come up with such a thing." All right. So the rally is January 20th, Tennessee Take Action Rally. What is it about a rally that we really reap benefits from? Is it just physically consolidating a lot of people, hoping they'll exchange ideas? Is it about leading by example, showing, hey, here's a bunch of gun owners in one place with a bunch of guns and it's really safe? What is the purpose of this rally?
I recently reread via audiobook Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, and one of the greatest principles ever is is it's not about what you have, but the perception about what you have that really moves things. And a well organized minority in any situation, that's really what moves the needle. So our thought and my philosophy has always been, um, and keep in mind, I'm the chair of the state Libertarian Party, but it is my opinion for specific policies for stretching of the Overton window in our way. The most effective way to do this, and this is what we've done as a nonpartisan organization, is everyone take off their ideological shoes at the door. We are focused on this one issue. As much as you want to ram your economic policy or whatever down everybody's throat, focus on the issue. I know it's tough in libertarian circles, but focus on this thing. Focus on this one thing. You can get everyone rallied around it for whatever reason they're rallied around it. You know, with we're in a deep red state, a deep red state. So you can simply point for us. We're pointing at the Constitution for the so-called conservatives in the state of Tennessee and saying, if you care about this founding document that you espouse love for, it says no red flag laws. Sorry. If you care about the Constitution, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. So the hyper focus on the single. You'll see behind me right here from our Rage Against the War Machine rally. We did the same thing at National. You had libertarians, anarchists, communists, socialists, an occasional conservative or Democrat there, and it was one issue. And you know what? The whole entire rally, we had no fist fighting, no spitting, you know, a couple goofy people that I'm convinced were plants. But other than that, it was peaceful because we had a united. The one time that unity, in my opinion, works great is when it's harnessed in a way to move a certain issue. And that is our focus. It's strategically picked to be on the same mall that the anti-gun advocates had their rally on. And the timing of January 20th, this is when our state house goes into session. So they're literally going to have to walk through our rally up the steps to where they're going to do business. So we will be very fresh on their minds. We have several speakers that we've not announced. We do have a couple. Maj Toure is confirmed. We love Maj. My good friend Delaney Baker, who is out, he's Luke Combs' ex-bass player. He's out with Brantley Gilbert right now. He survived the mass shooting in Vegas. He was playing on stage when that shooting took place. He's a huge pro-gun advocate. He will be one of our speakers with a plethora of others from the entire political spectrum, because at the end of the day, we have to understand that our human rights and protection of ourselves and our family and our property is not up for a vote. It's just not. And these people need to know this. If they believe the document that they say, that we're sending a loud and clear message to the legislators and Governor Bill Lee that shall not be infringed is pretty clear in writing.
Yeah, it's one of those things where people historically are deontologists, where they'll say imperialism inherently wrong, racism wrong, sexism wrong, Holocaust, Jim Crow laws, slavery inherently wrong. And then when it comes to any issues today, it's like, well, let's look at the costs and the benefits, and if we did nothing, other bad things might happen. They never have this, and they're like, I mean, they can look at the forced segregation of Jim Crow and say inherently wrong. And then when it comes to Hiroshima and murdering 100,000 civilians in Tokyo and Nagasaki, they're like, well, actually, there's a lot to defend against this. It's amazing how once they lose this emotional connection because it hasn't been, pushed on their televisions day after day, then they're like, oh, well, yeah, obviously I have no problem calling that wrong. But there's something about pledging their allegiance to the state and then the state aligning itself with the country itself. They immediately feel like they have to defend it in the most irrational ways. Rachel Maddow's argument against, Jimmy Dore, Tulsi Gabbard, Scott Horton at that rally was, no one knows what this rally's about. Here's a guy with a Russian flag, who, by the way, I got to meet at PorkFest. And I said, what were you doing with a Russian flag? I just out of curiosity. He goes, because I love America and I love Russia and I want them to be friends. There's no reason we shouldn't be friends. Certainly a NATO-provoked war. I love my country. I don't like Putin, but I love my country, and I hate to see Russians die or Russians live under threat. And I go, that is what I would have thought, but I don't know why I didn't just assume that. So, yeah, that is the good news, that they always have to strawman us, as opposed to, well, Scott Horton really took a beating by Rachel Maddow intellectually, so we'll have to come up with someone else. It's always this name calling that they go to. You said we went over message to Democrats. We spoke about how to talk to Republicans. So when someone comes to you and just hits you with the anecdote that I lost someone I love because of gun violence. Less gun laws mean more guns, means more people are going to be like me and live in misery because something like this happened. Why can't we just have a significant amount of regulations that places in Europe have?
So with this, I've tried this through the years, and first and foremost, I always default back to Socratic questions. Because if I just jump straight in of, well, here's this, this, and this, I'm assuming the way this person died. So I'll ask. And sometimes you'll ask, you go, oh, I hate to hear that. What happened? What was the scenario? Well, they blew their brains out. It was a suicide. If you took the argument in one direction, so you didn't know that, or well, they got caught in a standoff with a drug thing. Okay, so the more information you can extract within that first 30 or 45 seconds in a very empathetic, head shaking, oh, I hate to hear that, addressing that you hate to hear that this situation happens, because believe it or not, libertarians are against death. You can get a full picture and then fine tune it on the fly where, I'm sorry that this happened. I hate that this happened to your friend or your loved one. No one wants death. We all agree we don't want death or murder, if in fact it is a murder. We are going to disagree on what the best measure for that. And if you want to tout European countries, this and that, like every Friday, for instance, we have a group of anarchists, libertarians, musicians. We get together every Friday and debate in the wee hours of the morning on everything. And we've got guys from Europe there. One of my good friends from Finland, and we had this discussion a couple of weeks ago. And so, one of my great bait and switch tactics, or that I've used to kind of put it on its ear and do what's called, I think James Lindsay calls it the empty library fallacy, is you take it and you run with it. Go, okay, so say you're able to do this. What does that look like? And you shut up and let them explain it, because most people do not have a 3-point, they don't know. It's just platitude. So what, and so then you help them solve it. If they do not know, you go, okay, so if we're going to implement this policy, what's the population versus population? Okay. So Australia is always the fun one to do. So let's take the population. Okay, so unfortunately, we don't have an island country. We've got two. Okay, so we've got that situation. So basically what you're telling me is we would need the military to do this, and they're going to absolutely say yes. So you're going to need the military to go door to door for confiscation type programming, right? Okay, first right there. Now, do you think that program, how long it would take, how much money? They're probably not going to care about how long or how much money. Do you think that program from nose to tail of the United States is going to create net more death or less death than the current death rate of gun violence in the past 20 years? They're not going to have an answer. They're probably going to say, well, it doesn't matter. And so then you press them forward and you say, okay, let's put skin on this. How does that look? Because we have all these military bases around the world. So we're going to have to extract the military, close down those bases, bring them here to implement that program. And what's going to happen is we're going to stop, because most of the time when people are pro-gun control, you can pretty much pick up the litmus test. They're pro-socialized medicine. They're pro this. They're pro that. Europe is their wet dream for every policy. So by pulling out all the American troops from all these bases, well, then that's going to leave NATO exposed. And I'm fine with that, because then these people will have to pay for their own security, handle their own security in these other countries, and they're probably not going to be able to afford their socialized medicine. And you can go on and on and on and on and on and unravel every other policy this person wants. If they are a logical person, they're going to realize, yeah, that is probably undoable. More than likely they're not, because they base everything off emotion, and it's going to be the fraction is going to be reduced down to, well, we got to do something. And the we got to do something is, I'm sorry that this happened to your friend. The answer is not going to come in the form of any policy. We can look at statistics from other countries. We can go around and around and around and around. The practicality of the measure is it's not going to be able to happen. You can't do it. It's just not going to happen. So then you pivot to your type of answers. My type of answers are, this is a great point, and I'm saying all this to say this. This is a great interjection of, if you're speaking to a female or a male, you early want to pick up if they are in a relationship. Because my wife carries, and I bring up, now if we do confiscate confiscate weapons, your wife, what is her protective measures against assault, rape, things of this? And you can pull statistics. Right now we got people out at Knoxville at the University of Tennessee who's went to the dean with the statistics of assault and rape on campus, because they can't even have pepper spray. So you can take these, if you have these in your notes on your phone, you can address it, because in reality it's just a trade-off. Okay, so we confiscate guns. We're going to see a rise in assaults, because it's a lot easier to assault someone with a can of pepper spray than it is a firearm. And once again, I don't want women to be not protected. I don't. And when you say that sentence, by saying that you don't want women to be unprotected, the assumption is that they do. And you have to make them own it, because that's the reality of these policies. You want people to be unprotected because it makes you feel better about the last tragedy. And unfortunately, the responsibility is on each and every one of us, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah, all that is great stuff. I wish they would just concede that men having higher levels of testosterone are already stronger than women in general, and therefore it's actually more of an equalizer than anything else. But then they tell us that men can give birth. So a few things that sort of changed my mind on guns was the examples of Switzerland having extraordinarily high rates of guns compared to the United States, and them not having this terrible gun violence that we have. Another one was finding out that places like Chicago and New Hampshire have very high rates of gun ownership. However, the gun violence in Chicago is far worse. This means that the issue is much more cultural rather than pinning it on the guns themselves. Mexico has extremely strict gun laws, and they have more homicides per capita than the United States. Also, the police response time you mentioned. And with the case of Australia, there was a book titled Cooperation and Coercion, written by Anthony Davies and James Harrigan. And on page 100, they say, if we compare the same 2 7-year periods in the United States, we find the annual U.S. homicides fell from an average of 23,276 to an average of 16,432. That's a 29% decline versus Australia's 22% decline. The United States, without a gun ban, experienced a larger relative decline in homicides than did Australia with the ban. The second thing you can see in this graph that they use is that homicides were falling at a rate before the implementation of Australia's gun ban. So pinning it on that, this is such a classic government move. They wait till a parade starts And once there's a parade, they step in front of it and say, look at the parade I've created. Child labor is constantly going down. Then they implement child labor laws, and then they take responsibility for the rest of it. Black income is increasing at a rate of 4% every year for 35 years before the implementation of the Civil Rights Act. And they say the Civil Rights Act is what gave us an increase in Black incomes. And then the biggest example is Occupational Safety and Health Administration is implemented and workplace deaths decrease. And that's why we need OSHA, not mentioning that decades before OSHA, we had constantly been seeing increases in technology, more competition, making workers safer at the workplace. So I love having these stats on hand because they really do increase the amount of insecurity that gun control advocates have. One of the biggest things that I've come across, the most effective ways to communicate to people and sort of change the culture around how people see the state, was in a speech gave by Stefan Molyneux called the Against Me speech, where he says, do you realize that when we're talking about government, it's different from every other organization because these people claim the right to use violence by initiating it against peaceful people in order to achieve their ends. That's what differentiates it from the Red Cross, Amazon, the Catholic Church, you and your family. So he says, so in the case of gun control, are you willing to have the police use violence against me so they can monopolize guns and I can be left defenseless? Now, seldom is it is the response, oh yeah, I guess I've been wrong for 20 years and 1,000 Facebook posts. Thank you so much. But as far as planting seeds goes in changing the culture and changing the ideas of how people see guns and the state in general, that is another one that I constantly go back to. I watched the speech once years ago, and it still crosses my mind all the time because it makes it so personal. It seems very abstract. Should government have gun control? It's extremely hard to really picture what that is. But when you're asking, do you have the right to use violence against me for owning this piece of property? Well, because if you don't have it, then you don't have the right to delegate it to the government because it's only legitimate because of the consent of the governed. That was really huge for me. Anything else we need to know about the gun rally in Tennessee? Any other messages to Democrats and Republicans you would like the audience to be familiar with?
Yeah, you can go to tntakingaction.com. All the information for the rally can be there. Our sponsor list, our speakers are going to be unraveling out. We've got digital and hand flyers. So if you are in Tennessee, passing through Tennessee, or want to just help or be a part of this, it's call to action. We want everybody there. And it's going to be peaceful. That's the big thing about this. We don't need any January 20th equals January 6th type situation. So this is a completely peaceful rally that we're doing. And even if you're not pro-gun, we'd still love to see you there because these kind of events are where real conversations happen. It's so easy for us to yell past each other as a society sometimes, but these types of situations proves to be fertile ground for difficult but productive conversations. Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, whatever. We definitely want everyone there. Really, that's the basis that I have to think of. We've got in the state of Tennessee, my pitch to everybody is we're trying to be we want to be the free state of Tennessee, so the southern free state. We've got a real good concentration of liberty-minded people here. Our Libertarian Party is very active. We were just at Freedom Fest, had over 50 of our own people there at Freedom Fest helping with volunteering, really trying to strong arm them into coming back to Tennessee. We had a great time. But my biggest message to folks is sometimes you got to turn off the internet, live in the real world, and actually do something productive. Not necessarily staying busy, but if you are in the Libertarian Party, contact someone. You can go to every state has a website, contact someone. And I'm big on chase your passion. If you're the person that brings up, maybe gun rallies aren't your thing, you're big on candidate support. Well, that's awesome. Contact your people. Typically, it's a good indicator. If you're passionate about a topic, then you should do that and not this. We're big on division of labor. in the liberty movement. And unfortunately, for a really long time, everybody had to do everything at all times. And that increases your burnout rate, your lack of productivity, and a real big leaning on labor theory of value. Well, I've been here for X amount of years doing X amount of this for X, it doesn't mean you did anything effective or well, but you've been doing it.
Yeah.
But now it's really exciting in the liberty movement at large to be seeing a lot of specialists come in that are able to take this and run with it and get involved, get off the couch. We need everybody that we can that are both solid on their foundational principles, effective in their local communities, state communities at large. Just understand that the liberty movement is a body, and we need every effective piece of that body working together in tandem for the betterment and the growth of the body. And that's a very religious sounding thing, but some libertarians I've met are awful religious about liberty.
Yeah. Check out tntakingaction.com. Link will be in the description. Josiah, I know you're a big reader. Let's end by giving one book recommendation to libertarians and one book recommendation to non-libertarians. What would you say?
For libertarians, I literally just redid it, A New Liberty by Rothbard. In fact, I heard RFK's speech at Freedom Fest, and it sounded eerily similar to I cannot remember the chapter number, about how to solve environmental issues through class action and through contract law. So somebody's been in RFK's ear about digging up some of that old stuff, which I enjoyed to hear. I don't know about the buy-in, but we'll see. But for non-libertarians, you can get I brought cases and cases of paperbacks of Anatomy of the State. That's a very easy listen during an airplane ride. The Mises Institute provides them. It's an easy read, an easy audible read. You can listen to Tom Woods read it in the Anarchist Handbook audiobook, or you can listen to countless audiobooks. It's about 30 to 45 minutes, depending on your speed of reading. That is a very good eye-opener that I've used with left-wing and right-wing folks. Because it says different things to different peoples for the realization of just what the state is, how it does, and how corrupt and just damn ugly it is.
Check out tntakingaction.com for more information on the rally. Josiah Baker, thank you so much for your time, brother.
Thank you, man.